Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Maitland City Council meeting of September 25th, 2023. If you would please silence your phones, and for anyone who would like to speak during the public period or any public periods, please fill out a speaker card, and they're available out front. They're also available at the podium. Let's begin the evening with a moment of silence. If you would. Stand, pledge allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first order of business this evening is a public hearing, at which we will set the tax rate. Lori, would you please read the order title?
That's Resolution 12-2023, a resolution adopting a 4.9464 mil ad valorem tax levy upon all real and personal property for the appropriations to the general operating expenses of the city. A 0.2020 mil voted debt service levy upon all real and personal property for appropriation to the City of Maitland Florida Limited Tax General Obligation Refunding Note for the City of Maitland, Florida, commencing on October 1, 2023, and ending on September 30th, 2024, authorizing the city manager or designee of the city to certify such millage and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Mr. Regenstein, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, sir. Just briefly to go over the budget calendar to where we are tonight. In January through April, as usual, we did our staff review to put together original draft budget. That went to our boards, LAB, TAB, and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board to review the capital portions of those plans before forwarding it to the City Council. Also in April, we had the strategic planning session where we laid out our strategic priorities and talked about how we were going to achieve those within the budget parameters that we initially laid out. Moving into the summer, we did we issued our initial budget draft. On July 17th, we had our general fund workshop where we went over the intricacies of the general fund. On July 18th, we met with library and A&H to go over that, to have a workshop to go over their budgets. On July 24th, we sent the tentative millage rate. On August 7th, we had another budget workshop. That was for the enterprise funds, water, sewer, stormwater, and special revenue funds. On August 28th was our deadline to set the stormwater rates. We did that. That was the 3% increase that we have implemented year over year. On September 11th, we had our first reading of the budget resolution, talked about the millage rate, the budget and CIP, which brings us tonight, September 25th, the final adoption public hearing for the millage rate, budget, and CIP. This is the revenue summary for the general fund. As you can see, we've laid out between 2021 and what we're proposing for 2024. We're basing this budget based upon the tentative millage rate of 4.9464, which is projecting a little bit over a $39 million general fund revenue budget. Obviously, you can see all that's not in ad valorem tax. So we have a number of different revenue sources that we rely on to operate the city. I'll go over those in just a minute. But the only thing we have real control over is the ad valorem taxes, because that's where we set those rates. Others are at the discretion of the state or the county. Just going down the line, other taxes and user fees include utility taxes, gas taxes, communication service tax, Business tax receipts, state revenue projections show us decreasing in terms of gas tax revenue this year, but overall it's going up just a little bit, just not as much as we would have projected. Our licenses and permit include building permits, franchise fees, special assessments like the Greenwood Garden special assessment. Our intergovernmental revenue, that includes federal and state grants, state revenue sharing, half-cent sales tax. State projections show some reduced revenue in the half-cent sales tax, which is one of our bigger revenue sources. You see that reflected in this year's proposed budget. Charges for services are just that, charges for services. That includes our EMS transport services, our police school officers, off-duty details, and our parks program. So we have that money in there, so it's almost like a revolving fund where we pay our officers or our firefighters to provide the service, and that money comes back into that fund, but we have to budget in that fund to pay those initial costs. Fines and forfeitures are just that, fines and forfeitures. This money is used for police training purposes. The miscellaneous fund includes investment incomes and interfund transfers from our utility fund, our lake fund, our special revenue, and our enterprise funds. Those funds go to the general fund for the administrative charges that it takes to run those, IT department, payroll, admin services, things like that. Finally, at the bottom you have our repayment to the general fund from the CRA. As we talked about through the budget process, we treat this as one-time money. It's not a recurring revenue source. It's actually going to be paid off in 2027. So we use that primarily to fund capital projects. The additional millage rate adds additional approximately $3 million to the general fund. This is a combination of a 6% increase in property values that generated about $900,000, and the additional revenue is generated by the increase in millage, which is that $2 million difference. As we've talked about, we have realized some savings, primarily in insurance rates, that we talked about at our last meeting. As far as the recommended budget goes, the majority of the additional funding will be going to class and comp, which is the study we're doing for employee salaries and ranges. Again, as we've been talking about for the last year and a half, over the last several years, we've been sort of, when we looked at salaries, we've been looking at sort of being the average of the average in terms of where we are with our competitors. That's sort of put us behind the curve. Has resulted in us for much of the last year and a half being down up to over 50 employees. We're in the upper 30s right now, and when it comes to employee vacancies. The good news is that we're not experiencing the turnover that we were having in the past. We've sort of been able to stabilize, to stop the bleeding, to have people hang around here, so we're not losing 2 people, gaining 3, losing 3, gaining 2. So we've at least been able to stabilize on that front. On the insurance front, we have realized some cost savings. We talked about again at the last meeting of $175,000 in our insurances. We did budget 10% increase in health insurance and 20% increase in our property and casualty insurance. Again, giving credit to Liberty Gondar, our HR risk management director. She was able to negotiate those rates down from 10% to 6.5%, and on the health insurance, and from 20 to 14% increase in our property and casualty insurance. The important thing to remember about the insurance rates is those aren't all realized within the general fund. Those are spread out amongst all funds. So you also have your enterprise funds being able to take advantage of that. But when it comes down to it, it resulted in about $175,000 savings to the general fund. Based upon the discussions we had at the last meeting, those funds have been placed into capital reserves to fund additional capital for next year. Again, as we talked about, you can go to additional paving or cost overruns for projects that are on our capital list. Speaking of our capital list, these are our currently funded projects. As you know, we're moving quickly to close on the additional right-of-way for Independence Lane. We've already approved the design contract, so the design is underway. Cliff's office is busy doing the title work for that, so we can move to closing on that property as soon as possible to get that designed and under construction within the next year. Sandspur Road resurfacing is currently a funded project for this current year, and then it'll be rolling into next year, which is the entire length of Sandspur Road, which includes the milling, repaving, some curb work along there to get it back into the shape it should be. We have the Community Park Boardwalk, which we've been talking about again for the last year and a half. The design is 100% complete on that. We're planning on giving that to one of our construction managers at risk. Kim's already distributed the plans to them so they can start working on pricing on that as we're working on the contract to get them under contract. Of course, we have extensive sidewalk program that is going to be starting this year with the sewer project in Domerick Hills. That's going to be an 18-month project, so that would be going through 2024, extending into 2025. So as we're tearing up those roads, we are putting sidewalks down. That does include the sidewalk extension along Deloraine to Mohican, which will then tie into the Mohican sidewalk project, which we also have funding for, which will include Deloraine-Mohican intersection improvements, which will tighten up that intersection. It's just wide open that people tend to roll through, so we're going to tighten that down into a T intersection, then a wide Y that's out there, and put that last bit of sidewalk in to tie Deloraine back into the existing sidewalk that we built 2 years ago along Mohican that ties into the bike ped trail that goes to the middle school and the elementary school. Our gateway signage is currently under contract. We approved that a few meetings ago. The purchase order has been cut. So we're just waiting on fabrication and installation, which will also take place next year. As far as the West Side Trail goes, the final design on that is done, and we're working with DOT to get the contracts together, to get grant contracts to be able to start that project again. We're anticipating that will be given to one of our construction managers to complete that project. And last but not least, as you've probably seen as you've been driving around the neighborhood, there's some additional signage going up, school signage, to meet the new 2024 requirements for school signage. That's going to include the signage itself and striping of crosswalks and marking of crosswalks to make the areas around the school safer. So my point in this slide is to show that even though our actual capital projects for next year, which is the Keller Road project and paving, which we've added an additional $1 million to, there's still going to be a lot going on. And fortunately, as we discussed during the Enterprise Fund workshop, these projects are spread out around the city enough that we won't have contractors stepping on each other. So we're able to get these done as long as we can get the contracts in place and the contractors in place, assuming they have the capacity to fill it in. We're not going to have contractors working in the same area at the same time. The potential effects of the 4.9464 mills on your average person, I'll sort of run through this for you. Each mill generates about $3.5 million to the general fund and $431,000 to our CRA. The combined total millage rate used in the budget is 5.148 mills, which is a little over almost actually 0.6 mills more than prior year's combined total rate of 4.5633. That's a almost 13% increase. At 4.9464 mills, the home with a taxable value of $500,000 would pay $2,574 in operating and debt millage. If you compare millage rate to millage rate last year over this year, the proposed 4.9464 amounts to an additional $300.55 a year, or $5.78 per week. If we're going to be moving forward on the 4.9464, there are two motions that are required. They're included in your agenda packet and shown on the screen. So with that, I could take a pause and answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Does anybody have any questions for Mark? No? You were just taking a pause. You're going to carry on? Or
Well, we need to resolve this before we move into adoption of budget, because this will drive the budget discussion on the next agenda item.
Okay.
So we're just looking for a motion. So,
Yes, sir.
Well, just a little discussion before that. I wanted to go back to where we were last week and see if I can take one more run at it. After Liberty was able to locate the savings or to negotiate the savings of $175,000, I think it's a good idea to ratchet back the tax increase on that to meet that level. I think initially we had set the tax rate, or provisionally set the tax rate at 49464 based on a budget that you presented us that had, insurance at X rate. We then found 175,000, which would allow us to reduce that rate. If you had found that 175,000 beforehand, I assume you would have you would have brought us a tax rate probably of 4.83. I can't recall exactly what the decimal point it is there, but that's what we would have been presented with. It seems to me that's kind of what our task is, really to kind of set the tax rate to meet the budget rather than to set a tax rate irrespective of the budget. And with that, I think this is a 13% increase that we're being asked to pass here, and it seems to me we should do everything we can just to at least get back to where, to the minimum level that we can. And there's plenty of money left in this budget. There's plenty of capital projects going on. There's plenty of, it raises the class and comp. It's everything that staff had asked for. So I would hope that we could bring it back to, Mark, do you know what that rate was that we discussed?
Yeah, that was 4.8970.
And we're going to ask our residents for a significant increase here, and I think this is shaving it down somewhat more, but it's also a good faith effort, I think, just to set the tax rate at what staff is really asking for. So, in our due diligence, we've gone through and figured it out. I don't know why we wouldn't bring it down to that. That's my approach to what we can do tonight. Anybody else? Okay. Then a motion will be in order.
Well, actually, I'll just say, when I spoke to Mark today, I did ask about the budget being revised. I know that we haven't gotten to the budget conversation yet, but as the proposed budget on our agenda has that the savings from Liberty's, from the insurance is applied within their,
Yes.
to the capital fund.
Yes.
Doesn't really refute your arguments, but just so that, to be clear that the budget does, the proposed budget, assuming they correspond with this millage rate, does have a place for that.
But thank you for that. Before a motion, let's open up the public hearing on this matter. Would anybody like to address the city council on the millage rate? Now's the time. Okay. Seeing none, let's close the public period. And if there's no further discussion, the motion will be. All right, let's start with one then.
okay. I'll make a motion to set the operating millage for the 2023 tax year as 4.9464, which is 21% above the rollback rate of 4.0861.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Laura, would you read the roll, please?
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
Nay.
Mayor Lyons?
Nay. Okay. Is there any further discussion before we have the second motion?
I guess I'd keep rolling with it. I make a motion to set the voted debt millage rate for the 2023 tax year as 0.2020 for a combined total millage rate of 5.1484 mils.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Laura, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor Lyons.
Nay. Okay. Let's move to the next item, which is the resolution regarding the budget. Lori, would you please read the title?
Resolution 13-2023, a resolution of the City of Maitland, Florida, adopting the annual budget for fiscal year beginning October 1, 2023, and ending September 30th, 2024, appropriating funds for operating expenses, supplies, personnel, and otherwise appropriating funds for the efficient and effective operation of the government of the City of Maitland and all its operations and functions for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024. Providing a means to amend said manual budget so as to carry forward the funding of purchase orders, work orders, and grants outstanding as of September 30th, 2023. Providing a means to amend the said manual budget to reflect grants received after September 30th, 2023. Authorizing the transfer of funds herein appropriated so long as the total combined appropriations shall not be increased thereby. Adopting the revenues and expenditures in the position authorization table. Adopting the ad valorem property tax millage rate upon the assessment roll for the tax year 2023. Adjusting the ad valorem property tax millage rate and providing for an effective date.
Okay, I think
That was a marathon.
yeah. I think that should cover it. Mark, would you like to introduce that?
Yes, just real briefly here, on your screens, and it's a little bit hard to read, and hard for me to read on this larger screen here, is our general fund budget summary. You can see the revenue sources are the same from the revenue table that was presented during the millage rate discussion, generating $39.377 million to the general fund. You have then, beneath that, you have your general operations, which totals $36 million in change, which leaves a little over $3 million remaining for CIP and recommendations. And as you probably recall, there are two recommendations in the budget. One is to take 2 part-time parks employees and convert that to a full-time employee to provide better coverage and better service on weekends. And there's also additional position in personnel to handle our risk management issues. If you drop down to the blue box below, that shows where we are adding a little over $500,000 to our vehicle and equipment replacement fund, which we've talked about in terms of what's going on primarily with our police and fire vehicles and the costs that we're incurring as those go up. And you also recognize in fund balance, because the CRA flows through fund balance, the repayment of that $2.674 million from the CRA back to the general fund. Any questions on the general fund?
Any questions for Mark? No?
Right. Just briefly, I'd go over each fund that we're going to be talking about tonight. Utilities fund is almost $15 million. We have capital outlay of a little over $3.5 million there. That goes to our water line replacement, water treatment plant 6 upgrades, which is the first of 3 phases of upgrades over the next 5 years for our water treatment plants. Lift Station 7 construction, I'm sure you're all familiar with Lift Station 7, right? Everybody knows the numbers. It's the one that's in the middle of Maitland Avenue that's being relocated to Marion Way, where we purchased the easement behind the house on Marion Way, which we were very fortunate to get that out of Maitland Avenue and out of Marion Way, so we'll be able to actually access and maintain it. So that construction is slated for this year. Then Domerick Hill Sewer, which is funded this year, but that's carrying forward into next year and then ultimately likely into 2025. Our operating expenses are almost $10 million. That's our personnel costs, wastewater treatment costs at Iron Bridge, because we don't treat our own sewage here, and at Altamont Springs. Then repair, maintenance, and depreciation of the system we have in the city. And since we are taking on debt in that fund, we do have debt service payments of $1.5 million. So, any questions on utilities?
No. Anybody have a question?
No, but I have a comment. I'm glad to see that, we're looking at replacing water lines. I was just talking to Mark about this the other day.
there's still the original water lines in Domrick, and probably 35% or not more of Maitland has water lines before 1970, so the 60s, and I know ours was 59, and we're dealing with the 2-inch. In my neighborhood, it's a 2-inch water line that's from 1959, and it can't handle, that little 2-inch pipe can't handle all that pressure, so we have leaks all the time. So replacing those will also save with having employees out there and manpower, and even the looking at the water that we're not just going to waste, and it's just not going to go into the ground. So I think that's a great thing. So thanks for taking charge of that, Mark.
You're welcome.
Fantastic.
Most of the thanks goes to Kim on that one. She's
Thank you,
been
Kim.
spearheading that. Okay. Jumping to solid waste fund, here again, pretty straightforward, because most of this fund is contractual services, which is solid waste recycling, hauling, and disposal costs. Then we have other operating costs, which are administrative costs, materials and supplies, and payments in lieu of franchise fees. So this is one of our easier funds. So, any questions on solid waste and garbage fund? Okay. And last but not least is our stormwater environmental fund. We're a little under $2.5 million in that fund. We're looking at capital outlay of about $700,000. We went into some great detail on how that money is being spent. Greenwood Gardens is under redesign. That's going to be coming back forward to you. We're shifting our emphasis as since the City Council's made its determination at your strategic planning session to shift to address flooding issues versus stormwater quality, at least in the near term. As I've been talking to other city managers throughout the state, we're not alone. A lot of that's going on. And a lot of folks have the same problems we had with that intersection between stormwater and wastewater. And so a lot of cities are prioritizing what they can do where those wastewater systems get inundated by flood water and how to fix that. So although we might have been the first to be talking about it, we're now the only. And so that's a trend that's moving across the state, especially in central and southern Florida. Our personnel costs are a little over $500,000, and our operating costs are a little over $1.2 million, which includes everything that's there, chemicals, repairing our system, maintaining our system, street sweeping, everything along those lines. So that's our stormwater and environmental fund. Any questions on stormwater and environmental? A lot more to be discussed this year as these projects roll forward. And then we've set the voted debt millage rate, and that's $821,000 with almost $600,000 going to principal and $236,000 going to interest. That's what the 0.202 voted debt millage will be paying off this year. So, any questions on that? That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Let's open it up to the public. Would anybody in the public like to be heard on the item of the budget? Going once, going twice. Okay, closed the public period. And does anybody have any discussion? All right. So are you here to discuss the budget would you like to be heard? Okay. We'll keep the public hearing closed. And there's no further discussion, the motion would be in order.
I move to approve resolution number 13-2023, adopting the general fund budget of $39,377,000, utility fund budget of $14,982,000, solid waste budget of $3,055,000, and stormwater utility budget of $2,442,000, voted debt service budget of $821,000, and position authorization table for fiscal year 2024.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion is second. Laura, please call the roll.
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Wartel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye.
We vote. I was gonna ask the question, you're voting for the budget to correspond with the tax, but
The rate drives the
yeah,
general
I hate
fund
to
budget.
say, I mean, look, I don't want to dissent for the sake of dissenting.
Yeah.
Because I hate to say it, I was doing that for consistency, but I hate to be I'd like to be good with the order. I like to be a team player, so,
We feel you.
yeah, that was, I hate dissenting for the sake of dissenting.
We still love you, man.
Thank you.
I personally love and respect dissent for this.
I I'm trying to be an eye for the team.
Okay, all right. And let's recess the council meeting and convene the CRA meeting. We lost. All right, we are now the CRA. And welcome Teresa Garrett to the CRA member. So the CRA sits as the city council plus the Orange County representative. Ms. Garrett is our Orange County representative. I think we have another friend on the dais too.
She's not voting.
Okay, all right. Another ratio. Okay,
Can we just approve that?
just 1 second, Paul.
Yeah, just hang back up from stage show and then we go on here also quickly.
Can you do that right here, Scooby-Doo?
Okay. As the CRA, let's open the public period. Is there anybody from the public who would like to discuss an item with the Community Redevelopment Agency? Seeing none, let's close the public period. And we're on to the consent agenda. Does anybody from the CRA wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, let's ask for public comment on consent agenda item number 2. Would anybody like to address the CRA on consent agenda item number 2? All right, seeing nobody wanting to take that opportunity, let's close the public period. And a motion on the consent agenda would be in order.
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Okay, have a motion
I'll throw a second.
and a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Member Guthrie,
Aye.
Member Hall Harrison. Aye. Member Warzel,
Aye.
Member Wild,
Aye.
Member Garrett,
Aye.
Chair Lowndes.
Aye. Okay, we have adopted the consent agenda. We have a decision item. Laura, would you please read the resolution?
Resolution number 15-2023, a resolution of the City of Maitland, Florida, adopting the Community Redevelopment Agency budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2023, and ending September 30th, 2024. Appropriating funds for the operating expenses, supplies, personnel, and otherwise operating funds for the efficient and effective operation of the CRA, providing a means to amend said budget so to carry forward the funds of purchase orders, work orders, grants outstanding as of September 30th, 2023, providing a means to amend said budget to reflect grants received after September 30th, 2023, authorizing the transfer funds herein appropriated so long as the total combined appropriation shall not be increased thereby, adopting the revenues, expenditures, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Mark, would you like to introduce the item?
Yeah, just real briefly, the CRA is a pretty straightforward budget. We're looking at $3.651 million coming into the CRA, reserving a little under $1 million of that for operating, which will include the design and construction for Independence Lane. So we'll have some reserves ready for that. And the majority of the fund will go to the repayment of the loan from the general fund at a little over $2.5 million. So that comes back into the general fund, and then we move forward. And as I stated, the CRA is just about finish paying off the general fund, so 2 more years there, and then we'll be spending the CRA funds that generated reinvesting into the district.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or Mark? Okay, let's open the public hearing on this item. Anybody from the public like to be heard on the CRA fiscal year 2024 annual budget? Seeing none, let's close the public period and bring it back up to the dais for discussion, and if not, motion. Any discussion? Motions?
You guys made the motion?
I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 15-2-2023 fiscal year 2024 CRA annual budget.
Okay, we have a motion
A second.
and a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Member Hall Harrison? Aye. Member Wurzel? Aye. Member Wild?
Aye.
Member Guthrie?
Aye.
Member Garrett?
Aye.
Chair Lowndes?
Aye. Okay, we adopted the resolution. And we'll adjourn the CRA meeting and thank Ms. Garrett again for
Ms.
her
Garrett.
service up here, coming out on this steamy Monday evening. And reconvene the council meeting. We are now sitting as the Maitland City Council. Mark, is there any old business to report?
No, sir.
Let's go to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any, like, one of the items in the consent agenda? Okay. Is there any public comment on consent agenda item number 3? Seeing none, let's close the public period. And the motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion?
Second.
And a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wurzel?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison? Aye. Mayor Lowndes?
Aye. Okay, the agenda is adopted. Let's open the public period. This is the public period where anybody can address the city council on any item that's not otherwise discussed on the agenda. Anybody? Okay, let's close the public period. And we have one decision in front of us this evening. Lori, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance number 1421, an ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, granting a 3-year extension to the exclusive franchise with Waste Pro of Florida, Inc. for the collection of residential solid waste, yard waste, and recyclables, multifamily solid waste and recyclables, and commercial solid waste in the City of Maitland. Amending the solid waste and recycling material collection franchise agreement adopted by Ordinance 1382, providing for acceptance by franchisee and providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Mark, would you like to introduce the item, please?
Sure, just real briefly. In July of 2013, the city entered into an exclusive franchise with Waste Pro of Florida for solid waste, recyclable materials collection. On October 12, 2020, the city council amended the contract with Waste Pro, providing for an additional, which would be 2 3-year extensions of the franchise agreement. The city council exercised the first of those at that meeting. Staff recommends renewing the franchise with Waste Pro Florida Incorporated for the second 3-year extension period under the same terms and conditions as the 2022-2020 agreement as provided by the franchise agreement.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Somebody have a question, Mark?
No, but I have a comment that I just noticed what a great job Waste Pro has done with fixing the problem of being understaffed. I mean, it was, a few months ago, we were always getting notices, like, it'll be picked up the next day, picked up the next day. And as of late, I mean, they've been on it, so I commend them for that. Plus, their staff is some of the nicest people you're ever gonna meet, so I enjoy chatting with them. That's it.
Okay. Let's open a public comment period on this item as well for the Waste Pro ordinance. anybody like to address the council on this? Seeing none, let's close the public comment period. And to go further discussion, or motion to leave meeting.
I would move to introduce ordinance 1421, extending the solid waste and recyclable materials collection franchise agreement with Waste Pro of Florida, Inc. for the second 3-year renewal as outlined in section 1C of the agreement, and set a public hearing for October 9th, 2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison. Aye. Councilmember Warfel.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay. Reports. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any?
I have nothing, sir.
Okay. Mark?
No, sir.
Nothing? Okay.
No, sir.
All right. Council? Council assistants? How's your time? Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say that Saturday we did a lake cleanup, Lake Sibilia, and it was very well attended. We even had some Rollin College guys out there, and they did a great job. And it was just good to see the local support. And I brought my boat, so I took some pictures, and I asked that on the next report at our next meeting if I could put them up, and I'll show you all just exactly how the lake looks and the quality and what we're dealing with out there in Lake Sibilia. So that's about it.
How much?
We don't know
Nowadays.
yet. No, I don't think we got it, so I'll find that out too.
Okay.
For that.
Great. Well, that's great. Anybody else?